Hey everybody, Adam Savage in my cave with longtime member of Tested's extended family, Johnny Fraser-Allen.
Everyone.
This is your first time in the cave.
Yeah, it's I've been to America a couple times for holiday and a bunch of times for work, but first time. I mean, I've been in here in my mind while watching Tested for years.
And we've spent so much time talking about projects I've done in here and projects you've done in...
You've been in my studio three or four times.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I feel like you have been here. You have brought today an entire world. Tell me about where you have transported us with these beautiful sculptures.
Well, you know, with all our videos, I've got months to set up my studio and stuff, and I've come over to showcase another project, with you, which we've filmed. But I had 2 suitcases, and I thought, how much can I cram into 2 suitcases to show Adam? And Norm mentioned that it might be. We always see my finished work, but it might be interesting to talk about my process and the journey of that process.
Indeed.
So I've packed up a little kind of goodie bag that kind of walks through my process.
Oh my goodness.
And I guess ultimately I'm talking about the world of the gloaming that I'm building and have been building since I was 20, and I'm just about to turn 39. And I'm turning that world into a place where you can become an active participant in it through a 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons manual, which will hopefully lead to all sorts of different media. But it began when, after 2 years in the miniature building department on Peter Jackson's King Kong, where we built all 65 miniatures for Skull Island, there was a lapse between projects. Yeah. And rather than just leave, I asked Richard if I could teach myself how to sculpt. And
you didn't know how to sculpt at that point?
No, I was into designing and everything, but and I wanted to work in the design department, but all my lunch breaks were spent like Googling over Jamie Biswarrick's work in the sculpting room or Greg Tozer's desk and all this great stuff.
Yeah.
And Richard is so free, and you know him, offering with his, nobody's a gatekeeper there, and they're so free with their knowledge and wisdom and facility. My God, that facility. I thought, I want to sculpt. And so I started by sculpting the life-size hoggle that we've seen in some of our videos.
I've been getting questions about that because we just put up a Richard video, and a friend of mine texted me and was like, dude, what is up with that hog?
I know, he pops up he's just appearing in the background. And I made Alf and Ralph as well. And I spent quite a few months and quite a few $1,000s making those things. And I thought, great, I feel like I've learned the basics of sculpting and costume making and fabricating a creature, but ultimately it's not my IP. And I'm really stoked with those models, but I thought, man, if I'd been working on my own stuff, I would have generated some stuff. And so I thought, I'll start tampering with a couple of my own creatures, right? And but 10 years later, I've got an exhibition that travels the world that's narrated by Stephen Fry that Richard Taylor owns and is currently exhibited in Auckland with 40 creatures. And the good people at the Unleashed exhibition, which stores Richard's collection of gloaming sculptures, did an amazing job of packing up one of my 40 creatures into a box, and it got here really intact, which was great.
This was in a shipping crate.
Yeah, so a couple of days ago, this was in the Auckland Museum exhibition.
That's crazy, and I love that it made it here so intact.
Yeah, God, me too. I mean, I sculpted this in my 20s, but primarily they're all like this. The idea being, I wanted to do like a National Geographic of the medieval Eurocentric folklore. Wow. So it's like, instead of Rip Van Winkle went through the portal into the fairy world, David Attenborough did, And a lot of that was inspired by growing up watching the special features for Lord of the Rings and stuff like that, wanting to work at this place that took fantasy that bloody seriously, you know?
Right.
Like Lord of the Rings wasn't a jokey 70s fantasy niche thing.
There was no tongue-in-cheek.
Absolute real world. Yeah. Everything had to be real. And I, as a budding concept designer and enthusiast of creature features and stuff, I thought, and also, I got my job at Weta straight out of high school, and all of my friends had these like student loans for the jobs they wanted, and I had the job I wanted before the loan. So I gave myself that student loan, and I spent that loan on a thesis I created, which was the gloaming. And so this is one of these creatures. This is a Nixie and an Asai, and they form kind of like a symbiote relationship in the sense that the gloaming being a fairy world that's now being discovered by man, I was really interested in like how man would kind of savagely colonize that and use it for resources. Right. And these guys have a particular type of toxin that's used in like medicinal kind of things. But these guys are vicious little guys. And so these guys hang around the ponds and swamps where the nixies are, and the adventuring parties that go into the gloaming, this is one of the resources they're looking for. But it's great for the nixies because it brings people to where they can drown them in their ponds and stuff like that. And so during the course of The Hobbit, my entire desk was as packed as your studio, but with creatures from all parts of mythology. And I get to meet the most amazing people at Weta. I'd never go up to someone and say, "Hi, I loved you on this" or anything, but they're getting brought to my desk, you know.
Right, yeah.
And one of the people that came around who I've been a lifelong fan of was Stephen Fry, and he got to know the gloaming, and we actually bonded over a mutual love of Richard Burton, because at the time I was sculpting all of the flayed faces of dwarves on the belt of Azog's minion, or I forget his name, you know, some orc name.
Yeah.
And I printed out the faces I wanted to sculpt as a flayed face.
Yeah.
And I put Tolkien on there and Ian McShane and Richard Burton to me was Thorin Oakenshield when I read those books. And so in those kind of faces, I even put Ted Levine from Buffalo Bill Silence the Lambs because I thought maybe someone should wear him for a change, you know. Anyway, but he goes, "Why do you have a picture of Richard Burton?" And we shared Richard Burton stories and blah, blah, blah. And then we became friends. And so, you know, he would invite me to these dinner parties, which was amazing. He's just this amazing man. And before he left to go back home, he's like, "Johnny, if there's anything I could do for the gloaming, could I narrate something for you?"
Oh my God.
And I'm like, "Sorry, this is the guy that only narrates for Douglas Adams, J.K. Rowling, and Roald Dahl." And he's, you know, and so I was working on the trilogy of books that accompany this, but I'm not going to ask this god among insects to read through, you know. And so I wrote what was in my heart, the exhibition for the gloaming, which was basically like an episode of National Geographic, but instead of like David Attenborough going, "Here we have the zebra attacking," or the zebras don't attack, whatever, you know. But we've now got Stephen Fry who's going, "Oh, the nixie," you know, he did this amazing, beautiful narrative where every one of these is treated as realistically,
fauna.
Yeah.
Here we see two very different species of water fairy. Like many of the earth folk, there are water fairies known to interact and even cohabitate with each other, such as this Assae and Nixie. Both lake and pond-dwelling fairies, they are naturally camouflaged to the still and stagnant waters of the gloaming. Assays, for example, are almost indistinguishable from the yellow fungi on which they feed. Their flat-crested heads emulate the shape beautifully, while the faint red patterning of the fungi covers crest, shoulders, and back. When viewed from above, it is not only this likeness, but the stillness of the fairy that keeps them so unnoticeable. Though completely different in appearance to the Assae, the Nixie is no less adapted to his environment. While keeping only its eyes above the water, two ridges of fleshy neck flaps splay out along the surface, emulating the leafy pads about them, while a display of long tendrils from their flat heads rise up like reeds. From this position, they are able to remain unseen by any earthfolk daring to drink from their ponds, giving them the element of surprise over their hapless victim.
And so a lot of these things are full-bodied. This one I wanted coming out of the water set. These were roots that were left over at the back of a dumpster for some King Kong scenery, and I thought I can do something with that. And this is the fake moss that we used on King Kong.
I love sphagnum moss.
Right?
I love the slight metallics, and they're actually giving an illusion of skin translucency.
Well, yeah, at the Weta paint shop, you know, you learn everything there. They taught me how to paint with pearlescent paints and airbrushes and washes, and the water droplets are just urethane, which have gone yellow now, but I guess it's a swamp. You know?
They're beautiful. It feels really authentic.
He's a bit dusty, but I also like that as well. But so anyway, so creating these characters, now I'm branching those. This is like a Nixie den mother, and so we're expanding on the world of the gloaming and the creatures by. So that's an undersketch I do first.
Yeah.
Because that's where I'm absolutely free, no mistakes, and just and then I trace over that more, earnestly, and then so these are wood roses, and these are different species of wood rose that we're making playable characters. And then there's some brownies, and there's a brownie matriarch, and then they can form into a swarm. And,
like a rat king.
Yeah, totally. And so lots of different goblins, and some of these can help you, some of them can hinder you. And then we've also gone into creating the flora and fauna that exists in the gloaming, because obviously I'm so inspired by what they pulled off in the Dark Crystal, where they created a whole world.
Yeah.
And so these elements, these flora and fauna that we've started making,
Oh my gosh.
are not only original types of plants, but if you pick the wrong one, it's gonna stand up, walk around, and wallop you. Get off my back, sort of, you know. And so I had fun creating flora and fauna that looked. I really, the gloaming is really cognizant. You know what I mean? It's this breathing place that doesn't want to be colonized. And so
it's already a colony.
Right? It's really dangerous. And it doesn't want men coming in there and mucking about. But so through these sculptures, we've been able to miniaturize them.
Oh.
And I've been able to art direct my amazing sculptor, Mikey, who I found online and now works full time for us.
Oh my God, this paint job is insane.
And here's how they'll be, the size they are in the game.
What? Oh my Lord.
And so our painter at Printable Scenery, Mike Kloss, has painted these miniatures, and he's had fun giving the Nixies.
The paint job is...
And their size. You can, there's a toadstool one. And
I'm annoyed by this paint job. It's so good.
I know.
Oh my Lord.
Yeah, he's fantastic. And because I've spent 10 years making all of these creatures, and I'm really happy with them. They're really developed, but when my focus moved into tabletop gaming and terrain, Hagglethorne Hollow was always going to be the city outside the portal of the gloaming. But like anything, the gloaming creatures was going to be 5 or 6 creatures, and it became 40 and 130 watercolor paintings.
Right.
And so the 6 to 8 buildings that are in Hagglethorne Hollow, I was like, I figured out what I want to do now. And so I've basically been spending the last 5 years and the next couple of years making the world of the gloaming in terms of terrain and places and buildings as alive and real as the creatures. And the way that Lord of the Rings is so interesting because of Middle-earth being the biggest character. Yeah. If the Fellowship were just walking around regular medieval historic buildings, it would still be a good story and a good film, but it wouldn't be half as interesting as if you took out Rivendell and Rohan and the Shire. Yeah. That's what gives that film so much character that around the characters, right?
Right.
And so
you get multiple cultures, multiple...
Yeah, but they're as fun to design as the characters who inhabit them. Yeah. And the gloaming felt a bit empty without it. But so through the where I've been able to push printable scenery and tabletop gaming, it's too much an opportunity to give up. I was like, you know what? I'm going to use this opportunity to make the gloaming to the level it is in my head. Because unfortunately for me, the level it is in my head, I want it to be comparable to Labyrinth or Dark Crystal, but those are multi-million-dollar movies that had 7 years production and thousands of people working on it. Right. And so I bit off more than I can chew, but I'm like, I'm going to do it anyway.
You didn't know you weren't supposed to be able to do that.
Yeah, well, my best quality is utter naivety. As I never think too far ahead about how much work is going to go into it, because I wouldn't do it otherwise. I'd be like, that's ridiculous, Johnny. You can't afford that. But I find ways to do it. And so I've also got to be able to make the product work for other people who don't know what the gloaming is. So we did a whole campaign that was like tree forts and kind of halfling holes. Yeah. And once that product went out and people bought it, I then took the base files of those, which are really detailed, but they're as simple as they need to be so everyone at home can 3D print them easily. Mm-hmm. And then I spend about 6 months working on those buildings and making them in a way that you could never 3D print, but sculpting a huge amount onto them with milliput and kitbashing all sorts of parts of the sets that weren't meant to go together, and then hand gluing on the leaves. And so this is kind of like one little house where we designed these characters. So these are my fantasy versions of halflings, right? Right. And so this is a range of halflings, but we're now I've really designed them how I see the Woodwoses and the gloaming who have joined the colonists. Right. And so we're going to be able to take all of their proportions and costumes, but put in Woodwoses' faces and completely populate the gloaming world that I'm making in my small studio. Basically, that I started the day that I saw what Disney had done when they made the Batu model. Yeah. And I saw that, and I was like, I'd rather see that model than actually go to the Disneyland place. It was so great, and they did such a good job of making the films work. And so I thought, I want to do something. I want to make my own Disneyland in my studio. And so like when you look at that map and the different vibed zones, it's like, where do I go first? Should we go there? Oh, but then we can circle around. I want that excitement for when people open this map. And so we've got Hagglethorn Hollow crumbling up there, and then we've got the zone of the Gloaming Port, which is where the Woodroses have been given some space to colonize, and they all brew with fermentation and all sorts of stuff, but they've been able to use the technology of medieval mankind to up their game, and through the combination of their old lore magic and the new technology of man, we're now able to kind of breed cognizant trees.
Oh my God! Can I?
Yeah, please. Yeah, this guy's. I've started glowing leaves on this guy because I couldn't resist.
Wow.
And so to design these tree characters, I spent a year, like whenever we were watching TV or something. It was actually a Guillermo art book someone gave me at a con, and
I've got this book.
right. It was so nice to think of my old mate Guillermo every time I opened this book and had a scribble. So the first couple pages are Guillermo's brilliance.
I think I've cracked it. Yeah.
And then you get to your own page. So I filled every single page, just not works of art to frame, but just like sketches.
Yeah.
Where I try every next picture is supposed to be a different expression and a different take on what I could do with tree or stone, and just and from these hundreds of illustrations, I then boiled that down into about 7 core creature characters, which these are a couple of them. And so these are kind of the big brutes that you'd send out in the front of your army. And these guys are like druids and tree wizards. Wow. And these are all, this is the product. You can have this at home. This is printed and risen.
This is so beautiful.
And I painted these up, lovingly because I couldn't resist. And
lovingly is totally clear.
Yeah. And then we've got the characters. We've got this ecology. This character here. So this is
I love this. This is like
a
a walkway that becomes.
So you wouldn't know.
Right.
So you don't want to get your boots wet. So he's lying over it, and as soon as he feels you on the back, he rises up to get you. Because I loved the Billy Goat's Gruff story as a kid growing up.
Yeah.
Because it had a troll in it. And so any time in a campaign I've been able to squeeze in another stall or anything that's going to populate this original Gloaming Port map. And then, of course,
you have meat hanging from the top of the stall.
So this all came in my suitcase, and I'm so glad it wasn't broken.
I can't believe this came in your suitcase.
And so this all opens up there.
Oh my God, Johnny!
And you've
hold
got
on. I'm just gonna move this a little bit this way.
So all 100 or whatever, gestural freeform out of my brain sketches. I use this as basically like a cookbook where I took a little of his face. I like his nose, his mustache, his chin, whatever. Yeah. And from that, I was able to, in more kind of earnest, there's a good one, create these bigger characters where I knew what I was doing and I knew what I liked about what was happening in these pictures. And
wow.
Yeah, and you get so much freedom for character in trees, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's like a political caricature cartoonist, but but even more freeing than that, Yeah, and then so I try to put as much.
Beautiful. Sorry, I'm just overwhelmed with how beautiful.
And the work that goes into these, I try to do into every building as well. And for me, like we talked about how like the locations in Middle Earth are such a character. Yeah. I every time I focus on one individual building, I make sure it's as much of a character. So this isn't just a treehouse; it's a farmer. So this is like how do you make a farm and a tree?
Oh my gosh!
And I mean,
it is right. These baskets of dirt growing fruit,
and there's the kind of the circle shape language in it. And I grew up loving Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and Return of the Jedi, and anything that had a treehouse in it, Yeah. And so this is all model made and kind of about 60% of it is hand sculpted over about 40% 3D printed stuff that I designed, and then all these little ropes and painted with wood stains and
that's the most fun kind of model making.
Oh man, I love it. You know, like I had to glue each individual leaves on, and then this one has this kind of Miyazaki vibe.
This is like an alcohol still.
Well, it is. Well, see, this character here, that actually, the tree is cognizant and he's making the potions. And so...
Oh my God, the tree is...
In the adventure, you'll be able to go and gather resources for this guy who'll in turn be able to give you really helpful potions and spells. And So what happens is in here,
Oh my gosh.
you've got the wine stomping on the wine thing,
yeah.
and then that goes down this
Oh, and there's
tree,
a pipe that comes down and
so that kind of ferments into the bulk,
Johnny.
and it's kind of like orange and mango, where most of it's orange. Like this is the mango bit. Like this
Yeah.
is the catalyst that goes into that main brew, and so they're all going to have stats. We're working with this amazing D&D manual designer, Matt Rauscher, who's developing statistics for every character, every ecology-based thing. Potions, spells, and new class types and stuff like that, which is fun because it's been great working with him because the gloaming's been in my head for so long. And at first, I was a little worried that he'd take the ball and run with it in his own way.
Yeah.
But then he totally did that, and he gets it so much. Then now there's times when he shows me what's going to happen in the gloaming, where like if in my 20s I may have been like, no, that's not it, But now in my 30s I'm like, I get to visit the gloaming. I feel like I'm an active participant in a world I created.
Tell me about your process in developing something this complicated with this many facets to it.
Well, I never know what it's going to be when I start.
That's just, I mean, I don't mean to say this with any shade in it, but that's totally clear. It feels so organically grown.
Well, for me, like I've spent I have so many, I collect Warhammer and Star Wars Legion and all these things, but I spend all my time making the terrain for these games because that's really where my heart is. But I loved kit before I ended up with a company where I can actually art direct a modeler to make my dream miniatures. I would kit bash my own miniatures out of existing range to make what I wanted. But so now I'm in a place where I've developed so many different products through printable scenery that I'm able to kit bash the world of the gloaming to this scale. And so I've just got this, every time something, we've got lots of test prints because we make damn sure everything prints before the customer gets it.
Sure.
But like a little bubble in something, that's fine for me. Scrape, milliput, wow, I've got a whole new thing. And so I've got all the stuff that I can play with between each campaign.
Right.
And everything I go to do is like, I'll make this one a bit less complicated, and it becomes the most complicated thing
Of course.
next. But my main super ingredient is milliput, right? And I use this so much, and I never clean my tools, so that's what they're disgusting. They're the only two uses of it.
This is milliput just sticking on your knife.
Yeah, I don't know how to carve it off. And so this is just basically a needle and an old dentist tool for
That is magnificent.
and
I
just
love this
just
so
a little
much.
paintbrush and some water, and then that's all I do to sculpt all of the seam work. I mean, here's an example of, I've got a bunch of different barrels and stoves from printable scenery, and then I've used this kind of foliage came on a type of miniature tree that I didn't like, but I took the branches off, and it gave you the bendable tree in the middle, which I've used, and these get painted up as this kind of distillery.
Okay, right.
But you can see what can happen with milliput.
Yeah.
And then
So the milliput is all these light green cream parts.
Yeah,
That's milliput.
exactly right. And then I've just got some flocking products. This is kraut cover. This is how I get that real. Once you get the synthetic looking plants on there, this is the stuff you sprinkle in. And this is actually from one of my patrons that backs my Patreon. And this is Green Stuff World, and that's all I've got left of that because I've used it so much. But this is like little seeds?
Oh my gosh!
And
They look like little
you put
perfect
some glue
leaves.
down and sprinkle those down, and you got autumn and Lothlorien. It's really good. And when I was making, after I saw that episode of Mandalorian with Luke, I made some bamboo scenery, and we've got a native tree to New Zealand, which is Manuka, and their seeds are longer than that, which perfectly replicated the bamboo scatter that I needed.
Yeah.
So I walk around my garden and pick up bark and stones, and then this is this brilliant product called Scenescapes, and if you open this up, and you just, I'm not sponsored by any of these people. This is the best stuff I use. But it comes with this
What
mat,
the hell?
right? But that's not how I use it. Isn't that amazing, though?
It's totally amazing.
It's so realistic.
It's incredible.
But the idea is, I rip that off, and then it comes off in natural patches. You maybe give that a bit of a trim.
Yeah, and this is
Hot glue
ground
that down.
cover, tree cover, bushes, branches.
And then when you glue it down for like moss,
Yeah.
you take a heat torch over it, and it knocks back a little bit of that really faint static grass look, and it brings it back to the kind of plasticky overall look that I want.
Yeah.
And then so this stuff, this is what's amazing. this is what was used on King Kong on the miniatures, and like wind can get at it. So when Alex Funke was shooting the miniatures, you know, they got a bit of in-camera motion that they'd film at a frame rate that made the miniature look huge. Wow. And this is 20 years ago, we were working on King Kong, and there were a couple of scraps of this left over in corners that Richard let me have to make my wargaming scenery long before I thought I'd be making a career out of it. And now I'm down to this much, right?
That's the last bit of it?
I had to decide. I'd kept this tree project for like 15, 16 years before I started it. But again, and yet another tested full circle story of how like a couple of videos with you just brings the community back and all this great stuff. A couple guys, Ben and Bunny, who are a couple in Australia, who watch your show, they said you should put, because I have no presence online because I just make the stuff and sometimes I'm on your show, but that's about it. Yeah. And they said, why don't you make a Patreon? So I started that. And then one of my patrons has, after 20 years of searching, do you remember when you came down and you saw the Unleashed exhibition? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Me and Mona spent months looking for this product and couldn't find it. So this one guy has sourced the stuff. So I can find out where, and then I'm going to be able to share it. I'm going to put it online and let people know where to get it. Because so many comments on your videos are like, tell us how to make those trees. Yes. I feel like a total, it doesn't feel right to say, here's how I make them, you can't. Yeah. Because I'm making them out of stuff that they can't get. Exactly. But now we've sourced finally, after 20 years, where to get it. So I'm looking forward to being able to share that. And more than anything, I'm looking forward to actually making more trees because everything's been down to the last kind of, if I spread these branches out, I might have enough over here. But it's really quite cathartic. You put I've just been binging the X-Files and gluing leaves on a tree, and it's a lovely day, you know.
A natural history of the gloaming. This fairy is a woodwose, and like all folk of the earth, she is a burrower. Her squat stature allows for a life comfortably lived below ground. Broad, thick-fingered hands with long, flat claws afford her exceptional skill at both digging burrows and foraging for food. Root vegetables, fruits, seeds, and nuts are the common fare of such fairies, and they must venture from their shelters to the dense tangle of forest above to get them. That's where the green hues of the woodwose's skin come in handy. Though an uncommon colouring for earthfolk, it provides a useful camouflage when above ground, which suits them perfectly, as the woodwose is a fairy that does not like to be noticed. Where many of the earthfolk of the gloaming dwell in small communities of tribes and clans, the woodwose, by nature, is a solitary sort.